before the assassination attempt, it looked like the whole Biden drama was going to overshadow the Republican National Convention almost entirely, because it really seemed like some big party figures were perhaps moving against him. And I'm talking about someone like Nancy Pelosi, a very senior figure and respected figure in the party, who does seem to be a bit of a prime mover behind the scenes and trying to perhaps oust Joe Biden. So the fact that the spotlight's gone will be a welcome relief. However, that also means that the spotlight moves away from his positive performances, like that speech just now in Las Vegas. It was carried briefly on some of the networks, the news networks, but even they switched away after 10 minutes or so of the speech. And I'm talking about the 24-hour news networks here. So at the moment, it's weirdly just when Biden actually needs some positive media, he's actually struggling to get it.
Yeah, okay.
He can't catch a break, it seems, at the moment, whereas Trump is getting all the luck.
In Las Vegas and Milwaukee tonight. Milwaukee, of course, the scene of the Republican National Convention this week. Las Vegas, the scene of Joe Biden. He's made a speech tonight saying that there is a tense moment in America following the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. He was addressing the U.S. National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
Our politics has gotten too heated. I've said the Oval Office on Sunday night, as I made clear throughout my presidency, we all have a responsibility to lower the temperature and condemn violence in any form. You've got to remember, in America, we're not enemies, we're friends, we're neighbors, we're fellow Americans. Most importantly, we must fully and firmly reject not only political violence, but violence of any kind, period, no exceptions. We have to say with one voice that violence is not the answer. That's what we should rally around as a nation. That's the unity I'm talking about.
Joe Biden speaking in Las Vegas tonight. Well, that's John Pienaar, who is in Milwaukee for us in a minute. How that's gone down at the Royal National Convention, if indeed they are listening. David Charter, also in Milwaukee for us this week, has been following Joe Biden's remarks in Las Vegas. David, good evening. Really interesting to hear Joe Biden coming out swinging there, really.
Yes, Daryl. I mean, I thought it was actually a rather robust speech from Biden. Do you know what? He's rather good when it's on the teleprompter and he's across the material. He delivered this one, I thought, very well indeed. It probably won't, therefore, get a lot of coverage because, to be honest, the assassination attempt has sucked out a lot of the oxygen in American politics. And there's been obviously a massive focus on Trump, but also I think a lot of the American media and the world's media watched the Biden speech for a gaffe and spot a gaffe in his speech as the normal slight stumbling and stuttering sometimes, but that's Joe Biden. And plus, he didn't really say anything new. I mean, he said all that stuff about unity and toning down the aggression and that the violence is unacceptable. He said that in an Oval Office address, of course, shortly after the Trump shooting. So we didn't hear much that was new from Biden. But then again, he didn't put another foot wrong. Just because it's out of the headlines doesn't mean that there isn't still a lot of machinations going on in the Democratic Party. But Biden's standing firm, and in fact, perhaps he's getting back on the front foot, because one of the big stories today was the revelation that the party machine, the Democratic National Committee, is trying to force through the ratification of Biden's nomination. So he is the candidate, and trying to do it virtually before they even get to their conventions. So do it in the next few weeks, like they're accelerating it. And so it doesn't quite fit in with Biden's agenda to perhaps restore faith in democracy, but it does seem to be that the party fix may be in to nail him down as the candidate before there can be a move against him.
Okay. Times Radio's John Pienaar also in Milwaukee for us tonight. John, good evening. Before we talk about what you've seen and heard today in the convention so far as the Republican Party are concerned, just reflect on that speech we've heard from Joe Biden and whether it sort of ruffles feathers or bounces off a place like the convention you're at this week.
Well, substantially, you'd expect it to bounce off. On the question of the president saying that he's going to stand up and do more for black Americans, I was just listening to a Republican black congressman from the state of Michigan saying effectively that Joe Biden talks a good game where this is concerned, saying Biden has been in Washington, on Capitol Hill, in different roles for decades, and not enough has been done for black Americans beyond the promise of making things better. So it's obviously not going to work with those black American voters who are already decided that they're not impressed by Joe Biden, and they're willing to give Donald Trump a listen. Fact is, of course, that among there's ethnic minority groups, it is Joe Biden who has a lead, but Trump has made inroads, not just when it comes to black Americans, but also Latino voters as well. And in what could be a tight contest, of course, gains like that count a lot.
Mm-hmm. David, just briefly, do you feel like the events of the weekend have given Joe Biden pause for thought, perhaps a little bit of taking the attention off him a little bit, giving him the opportunity, the space to regroup, rethink, perhaps the space to deliver a speech like that?
I think it's taken a bit of the heat off him. I mean, it's massively helped in terms of the pressure of the spotlight being completely transformed to Trump, because it was looking like, before the assassination attempt, it looked like the whole Biden drama was going to overshadow the Republican National Convention almost entirely, because it really seemed like some big party figures were perhaps moving against him. And I'm talking about someone like Nancy Pelosi, a very senior figure and respected figure in the party, who does seem to be a bit of a prime mover behind the scenes and trying to perhaps oust Joe Biden. So the fact that the spotlight's gone will be a welcome relief. However, that also means that the spotlight moves away from his positive performances, like that speech just now in Las Vegas. It was carried briefly on some of the networks, the news networks, but even they switched away after 10 minutes or so of the speech. And I'm talking about the 24-hour news networks here. So at the moment, it's weirdly just when Biden actually needs some positive media, he's actually struggling to get it.
Yeah, okay.
He can't catch a break, it seems, at the moment, whereas Trump is getting all the luck in the world.
Yeah, it seems that way. Okay, David, thank you for your time tonight. David Charter, who is Washington Bureau Chief, Assistant US Editor for The Times in Milwaukee, where John Pienaar is for us as well. John, it's sort of late afternoon for you, isn't it, in Milwaukee? We're expecting a slate of big speeches today from some of those familiar faces. Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, both contenders against Donald Trump at one point, expected presumably to fall behind him in their speeches today.
Yeah, and it is all part, Daryl, of the story of the day. As you say, just getting into the late session here at the Republican convention, we're going to hear from those big names like Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, who had their own hopes of making progress as a potential presidential nominee, as well as some of those who might have hoped to be the vice presidential pick, like Marco Rubio and others. They're going to be absolutely falling into line. You don't come to this convention and start tearing into Donald Trump, but what it shows you is the extent to which Donald Trump's command of this Republican Party isn't just strong, it is total. Seeing these people now, as it were, marching behind him, holding his banner high. Interesting to see whether Nikki Haley, who has had, and no doubt still does have, her concerns about the Trump agenda, now the Trump J.D. Vance agenda, when it comes to maybe a bit of distance with NATO, when it comes to maybe forcing Ukraine, if they can, to the negotiating table with Vladimir Putin. She would have a deep doubts about that. Will she nod towards those? Will she air those out loud? It would be a brave thing to do at this, well, call it the Republican convention. It's the Trump convention. It would be a brave thing to do here. But she's clearly a politician. The fact that she's turning up, a couple of days ago, we thought she wasn't going to come. The fact that she's turning up shows she still has things to say, and maybe an eye to her own future in the world post-Trump. So how shall she stake that out this evening. That's one of the interesting facets of the day.
Yeah, very much worth keeping an eye on that, John. Thank you for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. John Pienaar, who is in Milwaukee for us on Times Radio.